I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
Welcome into a special NCHSAA Football Championships edition of the fifth quarter here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I am Mike Waddell. He is Eric Lusk. He is the editor-in-chief and founder of NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com. Nobody better to talk about these four big state high school football championship games to take place at Carter-Finley Stadium and Kenan Stadium this Friday and Saturday. And Eric, the playoffs have been pushed back an entire week due to Hurricane Helene, but it is finally here. We have the 8 teams that will battle it out for the 4 NCHSAA state championships. And what a year it's been in North Carolina high school football.
Yeah, definitely a lot to overcome. Hurricane, the western part of the state getting knocked around by that. But we've got some dynamic matchups for this final weekend. A nice lead into Christmas.
Pretty exciting that there won't be any repeat state champions here in 2024. Reidsville, an early season favorite with Kendry Harrison, the all-everything junior, was eliminated early in the brackets, and then both Weddington and Hickory eliminated this past weekend, and a whole new sort of championship contenders have risen to the top, except for one team, and that's talking about its death, taxes, and Tarboro these days in high school football at the 1A classification. The Tarboro Tars are number 1 seed, and they'll be going up against Corvian Community at 3:30 in Carter-Finley Stadium in the 1A game. We're going to talk about that in depth in a minute. But what about Tarboro makes them just North Carolina's ultimate football town?
Well, yeah, that's the thing that's amazed me as well. It's one thing to keep a dynasty, at a college level, you can recruit, or a pro level, but they've been rolling for a while. Their coach, Jeff Craddock, has been there for a long time. I was just reading a story about him kind of reluctantly taking the job in the early 2000s, and then just his rise to building that into a small schools powerhouse. And they have the T formation. I read someone on social media called it the wing T, and they're like, no, it's the Tarboro T formation, and they run it to a T. So it's been a great year again for them, and they're back in the state finals.
Okay, let's start out. These games will be played over Friday and Saturday, sanctioned by the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. There are 4 classifications: 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A. 4A being the biggest schools, 1A being the smallest. And the biggest schools will start it out in the Forest at Kenan Stadium on Friday night. The East number 5 seed, Rolesville, against the West number 1 seed, Worley's of Darrell Brown's Grimsley High School, 7 o'clock at Kenan Stadium. This one has all the makings of a classic state title game. Yeah,
definitely. It's powers from the East versus the power from the West. I'm not sure how Rolesville ended up a 5 seed. I mean, I looked at them all year, and they seemed like they were, a strong candidate to be a top seed. But their one loss was to Grimsley in the regular season. So this is a rematch of that. So quick aside, my first job was at the Wake Weekly newspaper in Wake Forest back in the 90s. And there was no Rolesville High School. There was a Wake Forest Rolesville High School. They were just, they were 3A, getting ready to move up to 4A. Rolesville was a small little town. Several hundred people lived there. And their town board, I covered a meeting on the news side of their 25-year plan and how they were going to grow. And everyone's kind of like, really? Rolesville's going to be this? And now here they are, one of the biggest schools in the state, one of the football powers in the state. I couldn't have believed that when I first started working there. So hats off to them.
Who would you say is the favorite in this one between Rolesville and Grimsley?
Ooh, gosh, that's a tough call. I mean, Grimsley won the regular season, but I would say teams mature and get better. It seems like Rolesville has picked up steam. They both got players that are college caliber. Grimsley's got the Tennessee commit, Faison Brandon. They've got a kid that Bryce Davis, who had originally committed to Clemson and then decided to go to Duke, which that was a huge win for Manny Diaz. Boy, I think it's going to be a tight battle. One of those down to the last possession, high scoring, games befitting of a college game in Kenan Stadium. So I'd probably, if you made me pick a winner, I'd say Rolesville by a nose. How about that? By a point.
There you go. Eric Lusk with the pick of Rolesville in the 4A game. Our Old North State tailgate will be at Kenan Stadium on Friday night. We look forward to having you come out, meet David Glenn, talk with him, get some man-on-the-street questions asked by you, the North Carolina football fan. That's the Old North State tailgate. It's at Kenan Stadium on Friday night and at Carter-Finley Stadium on Saturday afternoon. 2 stops on the Old North State tailgate, and that's presented, as always, by the North Carolina Pork Council, representing over 44,000 North Carolinians in the $10.4 billion pork business. Bacon makes everything better, especially, Eric, when it is North Carolina bacon. And when we come back from this time out, we will talk about the trio of title games on Saturday. The 3A game, the 1A game, and the 2A game. That's next right here all across the bold North State on the North Carolina Sports Network.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. The Original Salt Works has become a legendary breakfast, brunch, and lunch place in Wilmington for both locals and out-of-town visitors over the last 50-plus years. Our good friend Bob Hubbard owns the place, but he's also the one cooking your food and often roaming the dining room to greet you with a smile and to make sure your visit is a great one. Bob has been running the show at this unique roadside diner for more than 20 years now, and he and his friendly, hardworking staff aim to treat you like one of their own. Try Bob's homemade omelets or special recipe grits for breakfast or his legendary cheeseburgers for lunch. The Original Salt Works, your breakfast and lunch choice on Oleander Drive in Wilmington.
Mike Waddell and Eric Lusk with you here on a special edition of the Fifth Quarter Show as we preview this weekend's North Carolina High School Athletics Association football championship games. We've already talked about the 4A final. That'll be Friday night in Chapel Hill, Rolesville against Grimsley. The North Carolina Football News pick is Rolesville, the 5 seed out of the East. But let's go now on to Saturday. 2 different venues. We'll start out with a pair of games in Raleigh at Carter-Finley Stadium. The nightcap back in Chapel Hill. The 3A game leads it off, though. It's an 11 a.m. breakfast at the Carter as number 2 seed out of the East, 71st High School in Fayetteville, up against the upstart West Charlotte. Number 8 seed out of the West. This is a heck of a football game. Back in the 90s, this would have been a 4A game, but these schools are now in the 3A, and they are going to be really well matched up in this 3A final.
Yeah, both teams have had huge playoff runs. West Charlotte knocked out Hickory. Hickory had been riding a 30-game win streak. I believe the playoff margin is 197-16 in scoring for West Charlotte, so they've been dominating. 71st also has a solid defense. Their score sheet 6 shutouts on the season. 11 games they've held opponents to 7 or fewer points. So whereas I saw Grimsley and Rolesville as a high scoring thing, I think it might be where the defenses rule today or on Saturday.
It should be a lot of fun to watch that one. Always nice to get a physical game going at it right there first thing in the morning. Kind of sets the tone for the day. Who's your pick in this 3A game? Are you going with the East 71st High School or the West Charlotte Lions out of the Queen City?
Take on this one again. I see a 14-13 possible battle, but I think I'll give the nod to West Charlotte on that one. They've knocked out the defending champ. Dream season for 71st. They're still unbeaten, but we'll give the edge here to West Charlotte.
Okay, so the North Carolina Football News, Eric Lusk, one for the West and one for the East. Let's go to the second game in Raleigh on Saturday, the 1A final. We talked about this earlier. Tarboro, the number 1 seed out of the East, just on a roll over the last decade of high school football against the third-year program from Corvian Community, the number 5 seed from the West.
Yeah, definitely the most intriguing matchup. I mean, you've got a school that's been around forever. Their football program, has long been a powerhouse. This will be their 8th trip in a row to the state finals, which ties Independence High School for most consecutive trips. And then you've got a brand new school, brand new football program. They haven't even played, 4 full years, but yet they're excellent. Everyone, including myself, was, just kind of saw the bracket. I saw another matchup of Mount Airy versus Tarboro. Mount Airy has won the last 2 state titles at the 1A level. But here comes Corvian Community. I had to look up where they're from. They're from the Charlotte area. So, again, this is kind of a matchup of new versus old. And, that's something the high school association is wrestling with. Is what to do with charter schools, and do we include them in the playoffs going forward, or do we have a separate playoff for them? But for now, they'll play each other, and kind of a clash of new versus old. Be exciting.
Does Tarboro finally get over the hump?
You know what? That's my pick. I'm not going to bet on Tarboro. That's like betting against Patrick Mahomes or something. They've been there. I think Corvian Community could be around to stay. They could be one of those programs that emerges out of that western part of the state, sticks around. But I would say Tarboro will have this one on Saturday.
As you mentioned, West Charlotte, Corvian Community, both out of the Metro Charlotte area. Also out of Metro Charlotte, the West 3 seed in the 2A classification. This will be the evening game and the 4th and final game of the NCHSAA Championship football weekend of 2024, as Monroe, the 3 seed from the West, takes on the East number 1 seed Northeastern in the 2A classification. For my money, the 2A always has the best football players. Why? Because I was a 2A football player. You got to go that way. Red Devils. But this one right here, again, you have a really strong, dominant team out of the East with a team that had to, bulge its way all the way to Chapel Hill in Monroe.
Yeah, definitely. Neither team has tasted defeat this season. Monroe comes off a win over Brevard, and Northeastern, Whiteville had kind of reemerged. They were, an old power, I guess you could say. Northeastern, knocked them off course. So this is tricky. You've got a lot of players that go both ways at the 2A and 1A levels. So that's a lot of fun. Monroe features an athlete named Jordan Young, who he's another kid that I believe committed to Clemson and then switched his commit, and he'll be going to Michigan. He's got about 3,200 all-purpose yards on the season. So this could be another one of those kind of shootout type games.
What do you think of this one? Northeastern Whiteville, the number 1 seed out of the East, against number 3 Monroe from the West. Who's your pick?
Gosh, that's a tough call. Again, toss-ups. Of course, you would think it would be this time of year. I'm going to lean West again. I'm going to lean Monroe on that, just with the athleticism they have. But again, it's like 2 superpowers colliding. It could be one of those games where one mistake or a drop ball or a turnover turns things around. So again, 4 games that are very worthy of state championship level.
On Friday night, the 4A game, Rolesville against Grimsley, 7 o'clock in North Carolina's Kenan Stadium. On Saturday, 3 championship games, 2 at Carter-Finley Stadium in Raleigh, the first at 11 a.m., the 3A game, number 2 seed out of the East, 71st High School for Fayetteville against number 8 seed West Charlotte. That again at 11 a.m. And then at 3 p.m., the second game at Carter-Finley Stadium, the 1A championship, featuring the number 1 seed out of the East, Tarboro, against the West number 5 seed Corvian Community. That is a 3 p.m. kickoff. And then the final game of the weekend, East number 1 seed Northeastern in the 2A classification against the West number 3 seed Monroe. That at 6:30 in Kenan Stadium. So, Eric, this is it, the penultimate weekend for North Carolina high school football, and a great showcase for the many great teams that have battled this season to see these 8 make it all the way to the Capital Region.
Yeah, this is high school football is a special thing. It's becoming more of a big thing in the state. Over 400 schools start the year. We're down to the last 8. This will be the last year of the 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. We'll be going to a lot more classifications in the future. So yeah, this could be an historic weekend.
That is Eric Lusk. I'm Mike Waddell. We'll see you out at the games this weekend as the North Carolina High School Athletic Association crowns its 4 state high school football champions.